Hi everybody, my name is Peter Parnes and I'm a professor in pervasive and mobile computing at Luleå University of Technology, where I'm also a distinguished university teacher and founder of the Architect Learning Lab. Today I'm going to give a short presentation on AI in research, from practical tool to existential question. This presentation was given live on May the 20th, 2026 at the KTH grade network gathering and recorded on the 27th of May 2026 in Luleå. All of my life I've had a mantra with me. A day when you haven't learned something new is a lost day. I just love to learn new things. A bit over 3 years ago, we all started to use AI on a daily basis through ChatGPT. Here AI became a tool to extend our ability to learn new things. It could answer all our questions, we could discuss things, and we could just continue asking questions as long as we liked. This tool became, as I said, a tool to extend our ability to learn new things, but only if we stay in charge of the thinking. That is, we cannot just take in things, we also have to think about what is it that we actually are learning. At the same time, the research toolkit has changed. As I just said, AI can explain basically anything to us. It can find new connections within data, help us create software to analyze data, help us write applications, help us write papers, analyze our own data and text. My personal favorite is the AI peer review. I ask various large language models to review my own texts there. But in all of these cases, there are failures, and these are really sort of built into the system. The failures initially were very easy to find. We got hallucinations, we got sort of bad references, etc. But it's becoming more and more advanced failures in these AI tools as long as they become better and better. And I'll come back to this later on. This session is not about being for or against AI. It's about navigating reality. Every researcher, graduate student, etc. here is already using AI. No matter if we want to or not, it's there. It's in our tools, in our text, email, doc management, everywhere. So we use it all the time, whether we want it or not. We have also moved from AI being sort of this search engine where we just ask simple questions and get answers to sort of an AI as a colleague, an AI that sort of works on tasks in the background at any hour on any task. This is something that really has taken off since the end of 2025 and is named then sort of agentic AI. So here we go from so-called passive AI to active AI. Instead of us just giving questions, prompting to AI, we give it sort of a higher task where it can sort of solve a bigger thing for us in the background. This is very useful because we can have sort of long-running agents, tasks that run in the background for minutes, hours, or even days. For instance, monitoring new archive papers in your field, or drafting new weekly digests, or iterating on data analysis pipelines overnight. And recently, during sort of April, May of 2026, we also see that we can have multiple these long-term agents running in the background. So we can give it one task, it runs perhaps a few minutes, it goes to sleep, runs again, and if it needs our input, it will ask us for our input. And we can have tens of hundreds of these agents running at the same time in the background, doing the work for us. These agents then solve problems for us. Not necessarily research problems, but problems in general. Or let's call it that they solve tasks for us. And this is becoming more and more advanced as time moves on. Let me continue with two examples from 2025 and onwards. The first being where AI has become very, very good at predicting weather. So both in speed and accuracy, and I carefully wrote here increasingly outperform traditional weather forecasting, but I think that in most cases it does outperform sort of the human weather forecasting. Researchers today are trying to predict the extreme weather events, the so-called gray swan events, things that only happen once in 1,000 years. For general weather predictions, these AI models work very, very well, but unfortunately, when it comes to predicting these sort of very random or seldomly occurring events, then AI fails exactly where it matters the most, on events it never has seen before. And this is an issue right now. Another example is AI as a research collaborator in mathematics. Here, Professor Ernest Rai from UCLA, he used GPT-5 Pro to improve a known bound in a long-standing optimization problem he had worked on for many years. He had really tried to solve this problem, but using AI, it helped him solve this problem, and he sort of got help. This was presented in media as AI solved the problem and did the research, but that wasn't really the key thing here. GPT-5 was really just a helper, a tool to the researcher when he was trying to solve this problem. So it sort of, the AI didn't do the independent research. It was sort of a tool that helped us humans. But we're also seeing tendencies to where AI actually can solve the research problems for us. So the open question here is that I think you should really think about, will this change? Will AI be able to do the independent research for us? We're not there yet, but we sort of getting closer and closer to solving the big problems. Just last week, there was a big announcement from OpenAI where a number of sort of old unsolved math problems had been solved with the help of AI. Once again, not independent like the AI solved it itself, but as a tool to the researchers when they were doing trying to solve their problems. So we have a number of limitations when it comes to using AI, as we all know. There, one of the sort of bigger thing here is that, well, AI cannot really extrapolate beyond the training data. Well, generative AI can sort of invent new things, but it's not really new things. It's just a combination of old things put together. And the same thing comes to when we're going to sort of extrapolate for research. Here that we have a certain amount of training data, and AI is really, really good in finding patterns in that and generating answers from that data. But it really can't sort of extrapolate to new thinking. It cannot ask new questions. It can only answer the questions we give it, and sort of it can combine and create new questions for us, but it's still we as the researchers that are sort of in the driving seat. It cannot take responsibility for knowledge claim. This is one of the most important parts here. We still need a human to be part of the loop to take responsibility for the results. And as I just said a moment ago, this sort of AI creativity, creating new ideas, it's just right now it's just recombination. It's not a genuine novelty. This is much of an open debate. Can AI be really creative? And I myself find that a very interesting question, and we'll really see what happens in the future. But it also is a question of, what does creativity really mean? Do we humans always sort of invent new things, or are we just putting together and building on prior knowledge and things we've seen, things we've learned, and when we sort of are creative? But perhaps the most important part here is reproducibility. The same prompt rarely gives the same answer twice. And this is really important when it comes to research. We need to be able to reproduce what others have done. Continuing on the limitations here, AI fails sometimes in practice. Early on, like 2-3 years ago, it was a big problem was hallucinated citations. This has become very much better today, but it means that AI invents plausible looking references that do not exist. So here, this has been documented in published papers across a number of different areas. Another problem is synthetic paper contamination. Today, we're getting a lot of AI-generated content and AI-generated papers. They're becoming better, but they're still sometimes quite bad, meaning that they sort of get into our research graphs and contaminates all sort of the research world there. So that's a problem that we need to be aware of. A third example is a paper that was presented in 2024 where AI generated figure passed peer reviews, but the paper was retracted only after social media noticed. And this was called the rat with the giant testicles case, where an AI image was created of the genitals of a rat. The paper was about this, and the sort of was very much exaggerated. You could argue that this was to better show the research, but it wasn't a true depiction of the rat's testicles. Then the final one here is that we also have sort of the replication failure. So AI assistant analysis have produced results that cannot be reproduced when rerun. So we get a nice result and then we try to reproduce it and then we get some other result, or we do not get any good result at all. And this is a problem right now, as this is sort of statistical models. But bottom line here is that we have something called confident wrongness. That is that this is the most dangerous failure mode, and that is that the large language models are very good at presenting their answers in a very language fluent way. It sounds very plausible, but it's also very incorrect. And we as researchers need to be aware of this when we use these types of tools. Another aspect of using AI in research today is the cost. And I'm going to talk both of monetary cost and environmental cost. So first, let's start with a money view here. Using these tools cost a lot of money. So a normal chat like ChatGPT, if you're going to pay for that, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, etc., cost about 20 to 25 euros per month, 250 SEK per month. This is of May 2026. If we want to go up and use it like in pro mode, especially if we're programming with the tool, it goes up to almost 200 euros per month, 2000 SEK per month. So it's a lot of money. And then you might want to use several tools, and this sort of adds up to multiple costs. Then the other way of using these tools is that we use it sort of from a agentic perspective, and where software interacts directly with the research models. It doesn't, or the language models. It doesn't go through us humans. And here we pay per usage. And here we can very quickly reach tens of thousands of SEK per month. This can be very costly. The third alternative here is that we have some kind of site license. We have that at my university for ChatGPT education. And in that, it also includes a package of tokens. We bought tokens for 750,000 kronor earlier this year. And just last week, it was an announcement that we had used up all of that, all of these tokens. So then the tools were sort of reduced and we can't really use the advanced modes any longer. A problem here is that it's really hard to show to the final user the actual cost. So even if you want to be sort of conservative, it's really hard to know what is the cost. This is viewable if you have your own account that you, like the normal page chat or advanced usage, then you very clearly see this. But if you switch over to the more site license, then it's sort of hidden, so only the IT administration see this. Another aspect of this is the funding bodies. Are they prepared for these costs? So if I say I want to use AI in my research project here and it comes up to, say, 400,000 euros, 4 million SEK within my research project, will the various funding bodies be prepared to pay for that? And finally, the current reality for many users and many researchers is that you pay out of pocket, or you just use the free tiers with limitations. And this is really an issue here. So why should I pay from my own pocket to do my job? Here the university should pay, but at the same time, I know that many researchers around me, they do actually pay out of pocket to use these tools. Another aspect of using AI is the environmental impact, both electricity usage and water usage. So it's a bit hard to find exact good data here because the giants, the tech giants that sort of own all of these models, they don't really publish all the data on how much electricity was consumed. But it's said that the now a very old model, GPT-4, that was released in early 2023, that it's consumed an estimated 50 gigawatt hours of electricity. That's equivalent to 5,000 Swedish households for a full year. And it's also a question here, where does the electricity come from? Is it green? Well, we see now that in the US, many of these tech giants are building their own both solar and nuclear power. Especially nuclear power is interesting as Google, Amazon, and others, they are buying up or building their own nuclear power plants. The other side of this is the water usage. I just read in the news 2 weeks ago, there was a small town somewhere in the US where they suddenly are running out of drinkable water because all the water goes to the huge data center that was sort of a big influx to this small town. So here we have a few numbers. These are approximations, but it's estimated that the global AI water demand is projected to be 6.6 billion cubic meters by 2027. This is equivalent to 1.7 to 2.6 times Sweden's entire freshwater usage there. Earlier, many researchers, including myself, have said that this is primarily a problem when we train the models, because that's where the big energy consumption goes into. We run computers, they use a lot of electricity and water to cool the data centers, obviously. But now we see a sort of a shift where the inference, where we sort of, when we use these services, as we use them more and more, that exceeds the cost in training, that the environmental cost here. So it becomes well, the systems use more total energy when we use the systems than went into actually training the systems. And this then goes from a sort of a one-time cost per model to an ongoing cost, where this just, if we continue using the same model, it will just sort of continue adding up and using more and more electricity. At the same time, yes, some of these models, they become more energy efficient. We use smaller models because they become more and more capable, but it's sort of, this is currently growing very much. And another important aspect of using this, especially when we talk about research, and that is, whose AI are we using? Today, there's a handful of companies that control the most capable models. Almost all of them are in the US, like Google, OpenAI, Anthropic. That is sort of, they have basically a monopoly on these. Training data reflects what is online, so it's what's available on the internet. That is what goes in primarily to the training here, and it's an overrepresentation of English, the global north, and the dominant viewpoints in the world. The third point here is that research cannot, using these models, these are so-called closed models, cannot be fully reproduced. When we perhaps get a reproducible result when we are using the models, but the models themselves can change on a daily basis. So the models change like internally. Some models get deprecated, we get new models all the time, new versions, or they just are withdrawn. This has happened several times, for instance, with OpenAI, when they just from one day to the next just publish a new model, and then the old model just isn't available anymore. Dependency on commercial AI raises the same questions as dependency on commercial journals, but with less transparency. Because we don't know how the training is done, we don't know which data it's trained on, we don't know when sort of this model is going to be replaced, so it's very, very non-transparent. A light at the end of the tunnel here, or in this world, is open models. So several vendors, including Meta, for instance, have released open models. That is, that models that we can sort of download, we can use them on our own computers, and we can save them for sort of later usage and reproducibility. But unfortunately, all the open models are not as good. So all the big tech giants have the best models as currently available. And I think this will be the case for some time going forward. It might change in the future, but we're not there yet. Graduate education using AI. So this presentation was given to a number of supervisors and graduate students. And I've included a number of thoughts about how AI comes into our graduate education. So I want to encourage every researcher or graduate student or just student that has a relation to a supervisor, a professional relationship here, and what you should really take the moment to discuss things here. Disclosure, what AI tools are you using for what tasks, and how will you describe this in your methods section? This is a really important thing that you really need to think about, sort of what am I actually using here? And this can be official, like direct usage, like you go to ChatGPT, you ask a question, you ask it to review your text, but also into other more hidden usage, like grammar checking, in your email, your word editing, etc. All of there's AI underneath. And the other is skill development. Which competences do you need to develop without AI before you let AI assist with them? So really the question here is, should some of these abilities or competences be trained on without AI first, and then the student should be allowed to use AI, like writing, reading critically, statistical reasoning, debugging of code, etc. All of this AI can do for us, but it's really something we should discuss on how do we train students and graduate students to do. Finally, it's also how do we train judgment? When the AI gives you an answer, what is your process for deciding whether to trust it? So how do you know that it's actually true? And this is not a black and white issue, but something that needs to be discussed as the sort of the answers, the change, the predictable failures, they just show up in different ways in the future. They become sort of more and more hidden. And this leads to the very important question here, the existential question. What do we as researchers, graduate students, etc. do when AI does the research? So what do we do when AI does the research here? If AI can read all the literature, identify gaps, form a hypothesis, design studies, collect and analyze data, and write up results, what exactly is the researcher actually doing here? I myself, I find this quite concerning. I've been sort of, churning this in my head for the last years. What am I actually achieving when I use all of these AI tools? And this is not really a hypothetical question anymore. Each of these steps is already partially automatable today, where we have tools that do all of this. They're not perfect, they do not do 100% yet, but it will change. And AI tools are changing very, very fast. It's about 3.5 years ago, 3.5 years ago that we got ChatGPT, where suddenly we had an AI tool that could produce, well, quite good text, not perfect, but quite good text. And now over like 3 years, almost 3.5 years later, we have tons of tools that can do sort of AI research for us. What will this look like in 5 years from now? What tools will we have then? And this leads to the question of what we believe must remain human in the research project. But this is my views or my suggestion on what we currently believe must remain human here. Well, first of all, choosing which questions are worth asking. Though AI is starting to suggest hypotheses, we still need to sort of direct the research. What should we actually do research on? What is the sort of research questions that we should investigate? The other is, that I already mentioned earlier, taking responsibility for knowledge claims. This is a role, not a capability. This is really something that we as humans need to sort of keep. AI can never ever replace us in that area. Ethical judgment in research design. This is really important. AI can help us with this, but we as humans need to be able to be part of that loop. Building trust with research participants and communities. This is really an important thing when doing research. How do we present the research? How do we communicate it with people? How do we gather data? Can AI do that with the same trust level as humans? And connecting research to meaning beyond itself. So what does it mean? So putting the research in a larger perspective. What does it mean for humanity, for Earth, etc.? The bottom line here, though, is that every line on this slide will be contested in 5 years. And that is the point, because I really think this is something we need to discuss. And you should think about it, and you should discuss this with your supervisor, with your students on there. Sort of what parts of this should remain human. And the deeper question for doctoral education here is that we train researchers to become independent scholars. But if AI can do much of the technical work, what does independence mean? Well, perhaps the answer is that we need to train researchers who are exceptional at the things AI cannot do. Critical judgment, ethical reasoning, creative question framing, and genuine curiosity. How do we really train our students, graduate students, to have a true curiosity as part of their future research career? I'm going to give you some homework. What to do this week? Well, first of all, have the conversation. Ask your supervisor or your doctoral students here, how are you using AI in your work? Turn it around. It's not just a question of the sort of the supervisor telling the student how they should be using AI or asking them how they're using AI. Ask the supervisor, how are they using AI in their work? And have a discussion about this. The other is run a comparison. Pick one task this week, do it both with and without AI. Notice what changes between these different processes, both in the result in what you've learned. And here try to distill this down to what is sort of the key differences between with and without AI. And the final one is write your own line. List the parts of your work you want to keep doing yourself, no matter what AI can do. Because I strongly believe that in 5-10 years from now, AI will do very much of the research on its own. We will have to keep some parts human, but it will be capable of doing it on its own. So here, each individual in the research community have to think about, what do we want to keep for ourselves? What should remain human? And to conclude my final thoughts here, the arrival of AI does not make research less important. It makes the human researcher more important, because the human researcher is part of the process and have to be part of the research process. The risk is not that AI replaces researchers. The risk is quite a one, that we slowly forget which parts of our work we used to be able to do ourselves, because we will sort of automate that away. And finally, a personal question. When AI does the work, what am I actually achieving? Research is also a source of meaning, not only output here. This is something I've been struggling with for now, I think at least 1.5, 2 years now, where I use AI a lot in my profession. I write documents, I digest data, I collect data, present data, do visual representations of it, do movies, etc. But I don't get that feeling of achievement. I haven't really done anything. Well, people that read my papers, they think it's really sort of, or what I produce here to the general public, that it's good stuff. It's good text. But have I really done anything? Have I gotten that sort of satisfaction of achieving something? Well, that is something I struggle with, and I think others are doing as well. So, the question you should take with you from this lecture here today: what do you want to call your own work? Thank you very much for listening. My name is Peter Parnes, and you can contact me on via email or phone. On my personal blog, you'll find a lot of writings and lectures and videos around AI and learning, AI and research, and you are welcome to contact me anytime. Please connect on LinkedIn and other places.